My name is Graham Whitfield. I'm 57 years old. I've spent the better part of 3 decades running an HVAC and mechanical contracting business out of Mississauga, and in all that time I have never once let my temper get the better of me at a job site, in a meeting, or at my own dinner table. Not when a supplier cost me 40 grand on a bad shipment. Not when my son spent 2 semesters at McMaster doing absolutely nothing but living off my dime. Not even the 8 weeks he stopped answering my calls, because his then girlfriend, now his wife, had decided I was controlling. I'm telling you that because what happened at his wedding back in June was the one moment in my whole life where every nerve in my body told me to do something, and I didn't. I straightened my jacket, took my wife's hand, her cheeks still red, the whole room still ringing with the sound of it, and I walked the two of us out of that reception hall without saying a single word to anyone. My brother thought I'd gone soft in the head. The bride and her family thought they'd won something. Before I get into how we got there, I'll just say this much. If you've ever had someone marry into your family and slowly start editing you out of it, you're going to recognize a lot of what I'm about to tell you. Let me take you back to where it actually started. 32 years in mechanical contracting teaches you that nobody ever notices the parts that are working. Nobody walks into a building and says, "What a beautiful boiler room." They notice when the heat doesn't come on in February. I started as an apprentice at 19, got my license at 23, and by 30 I had my own small outfit, 3 trucks, a rented bay off Dundas, and a reputation I built one referral at a time, because in this business your word is the only currency that doesn't fluctuate. My wife Donna is 55. We met at a curling bonspiel in Burlington in the winter of 1995, and on our second date, I drove an hour and a half each way just because she'd mentioned, in passing, that she missed the butter tarts from a bakery near her grandmother's place in Niagara. She taught grade 2 for 26 years at a school 15 minutes from our house, retired 3 years ago, cries at Tim Hortons commercials around Christmas, keeps an enormous vegetable garden out back that produces more zucchini than the two of us could eat in a decade. And in all the years I've known her, I have never once heard her say a genuinely unkind word about another human being. Our son Tristan is 29. Smart kid, good with his hands and his head both. Opened his own commercial real estate brokerage 3.5 years ago, and the day he signed the lease on his first little office, I was prouder than I'd been the day he walked at convocation. I helped him plenty, not money, never money, that wasn't how I raised him, but advice, contacts, sitting on the phone with him at 11 at night talking through a deal that had gone sideways. I learned a long time ago to pick my battles with Tristan. That started the year he turned 23, when he got tangled up with a business partner, who turned out to be exactly the kind of person I'd warned him about. I came in hard on that one, the way my own father would have, and Tristan didn't speak to me for almost 3 months. After that, I told myself I'd learn restraint. What I didn't understand, what it took me another 6 years to figure out, was that every fight I chose not to have was quietly teaching my son that I'd never really fight at all. And Naomi understood that about me better than I understood it about myself. Tristan brought Naomi home for the first time on a Sunday evening in the fall, about 2 years before the wedding. She was 26, polished in that way that makes a young man's whole face change when he looks at her, like he can't quite believe his luck. She shook my hand firm and direct, looked me square in the eye doing it. With Donna it was a different story entirely. Donna had made a roast, set the table with her mother's china, and when Naomi walked into the kitchen, Donna did what she always does, opened her arms wide and warm. Naomi offered her a stiff cheek and one quick pat on the shoulder, like she was patting down a coat for keys. Donna never said a thing about it, she never does. I noticed something else that night, the way Naomi's eyes moved over the house, over me, quick and assessing, like she was pricing the place. Not rude exactly, she was never technically rude, but there was an arithmetic happening behind her face that I couldn't shake off. My brother my brother-in-law, Donna's brother Curtis, drove up from Ottawa that same weekend and cornered me by the garage after everyone had gone to bed. "Graham," he said, "that girl is sizing this whole family up like a property assessment." I told him he'd known her 4 hours. 4 hours is plenty, he said, and poured himself a coffee he didn't need. "Don't let yourself get managed out of your own house." I told him he was being unfair. I told myself he was just being protective, the way he always was with Donna. A few months on, Tristan mentioned offhand, no particular reason, that before that first dinner Naomi had asked him what his parents owned outright, what the business was worth, whether we had a cottage. I filed it away and did nothing about it. That was my second mistake. The first was telling Curtis he was wrong. The 2 years after that were death by 1,000 small courtesies. There was never one moment I could point to. It was Naomi forgetting Donna's birthday until 4 in the afternoon of the actual day, twice in a row. It was Donna telling one of her good stories at dinner. 26 years of 7-year-olds gives a person plenty of good stories. And Naomi checking her phone halfway through, turning slightly away, just enough to make Donna lose her thread and trail off. It was Naomi routing everything through Tristan eventually. Tell your mom we can't make Thanksgiving. Let your dad know we'll be late. Until Tristan became the only wire running between two poles that were never allowed to actually touch. And Donna, who never asks for anything, started showing up to family dinners with an apology already loaded in before she'd said a word. She'd look across the table at me sometimes with this expression, like she was asking permission just to exist out loud. That was the thing I never forgave. Not what Naomi did to me, what she did, slowly, to Donna's ease in her own family. When Tristan called to say he and Naomi were engaged, Donna cried happy tears right there in the kitchen and started planning a dinner before she'd even hung up the phone. I went out and sat on the back deck for a while before I came back inside. 2 days later, my oldest friend, a fellow named Russ Dorkson, I've known since we were apprentices together at the same shop in Dixie Road, called to check in. He'd heard the news. You sound quiet, Graham. Just thinking. About what? Whether I've been patient or whether I've just been absent. Not always sure, those are different things. Russ didn't say anything for a beat, then asked me again after the wedding. The engagement party was at a restaurant on King West, the kind of place where the cloth napkins cost more than a tank of diesel. The invitation came 4 days out, not by phone or email. A printed card pushed through our mail slot like a bylaw notice. Donna pressed it flat on the counter and said nothing. We went, obviously. You go. Naomi's mother, Sandra Lynn, greeted us near the door in pearls, and a smile that said how nice you could make it. The kind of smile that lets you know exactly what category of guest you are. She introduced us to 3 people in the first 10 minutes and got our last name wrong twice, not out of malice, just because she'd never bothered learning it. We were seated at the table closest to the kitchen pass-through. You could hear the dishwasher every time the door swung. Naomi's father spoke for nearly 10 minutes during the toasts about the family's history in commercial real estate development, about Naomi's accomplishments, about the bright future ahead. He mentioned Tristan twice, warmly. He did not mention us once. Naomi came by our table near the end of the night, touched Donna's arm, said, "Thanks so much for coming, this is so great," in the exact tone you'd use on a neighbor who'd dropped off a casserole. I excused myself to find the washroom, and on the way back I passed an alcove where Sandra Lynn was talking low to a friend. At least Tristan's ambitious. The father seems like he never left the shop floor. I stood there a second, straightened my jacket, and walked back to the table. I didn't tell Donna what I'd heard. I just found her hand under the tablecloth and held it the rest of the night. I remembered every word of it, though. 3 months before the wedding, the venue's tent and rigging contractor backed out. Permit issue, double booked, something. Tristan called me on a Wednesday night, voice tight, needing someone who could mobilize fast and make it look like nothing had ever gone wrong. He asked me not to mention it to Naomi. I called in a favor from a rigging outfit I'd worked with for almost 20 years, and 48 hours later the tent structure was up, inspected, better than what they'd originally booked. No invoice, no fanfare. 2 weeks after that, Tristan called again, different tone entirely. Dad, Naomi found out. Found out what? That you fixed the tent thing. She feels like you went around her. I let that sit a second. Tristan, you called me. I know, but she feels like you're trying to make yourself necessary, like you're overstepping. I recognized the flatness in his voice. A man reading off a script he didn't fully believe in himself. Can you just back off, he said. Please, just till after the wedding. All right, I said. I'll back off. I hung up and sat by the window a long while. Not angry exactly. Something closer to grief, the slow kind you don't notice creeping in until you're already standing waist deep in it. The rehearsal dinner was 60 people in a private room above a restaurant on the lake, white linen, a slideshow set up on a screen at the end of the room. It ran 12 minutes. I counted 22 family photos. Naomi and Tristan at a cottage in Muskoka. Tristan golfing with her father. Naomi at her convocation, at her sister's wedding, at some gala I'd never heard of. Not one photo of Donna, not one of me, not one of Tristan before Naomi existed in his life. Donna sat beside me and watched all 22 slides with the same small, careful smile she used to wear at parent-teacher interviews when a parent was upset with her. The smile that says, "I'm fine, this is fine." When Tristan stood to give his speech, he thanked his groomsmen by name, thanked Naomi's family at length, thanked his closest friends. Then, almost as an afterthought, "And of course, Mom and Dad, thanks for being here. Thanks for being here." The exact phrase you'd use on a coworker who'd covered your shift. I stood when he finished, crossed the room, shook his hand, and pulled him close enough that only he could hear me. "I love you. That's never going to change. But there's a moment coming where you're going to have to decide what kind of man you are. Not for me. Not for Naomi. For yourself." He looked at me and didn't understand it yet. Across the room, Naomi watched the two of us with an expression I couldn't quite name. Not concern, not guilt, something close to recalculating. In the car back to the hotel, Curtis called. "Graham, I heard Naomi tell one of her bridesmaids she was going to handle the situation with your wife tomorrow. For good." I stared out the windshield. I didn't sleep that night, not from fear, but because I knew one way or another, tomorrow was the last day things could stay the way they'd been staying. Saturday morning, the hotel room smelled like the kettle Donna had put on at 6, because neither of us sleeps much past 5:30 anymore. I was knotting my tie in the bathroom mirror when she appeared in the doorway. In the dress she'd driven to 3 different stores to find. Navy, the one she'd tried on 4 times before she was sure. She looked at herself in the mirror beside me. Do I look all right? 29 years, same question before every school concert, every Christmas dinner, every day that mattered. I straightened the little brooch near her collar. "You look like the woman I drove an hour and a half for butter tarts to impress. You always have." She smiled, and then it faded at the edges. "Promise me today's going to be okay, Gray." I looked at her, at how much care she'd put into this morning, this dress, this attempt to be exactly the right kind of mother of the groom. "I promise we'll handle whatever happens together." It wasn't what she'd asked for, and she knew it, but she nodded anyway. Before we left, I texted Russ. "If I call you today, pick up." He wrote back inside a minute. Always. The venue was a stone manor house outside the city, the kind that books up 2 years in advance for weddings, with a ballroom that holds 350 comfortably. When we pulled into the lot, I spotted Naomi near the entrance in her gown, talking to her mother. She saw us. She didn't wave. She looked at Donna the way you'd look at a problem you'd already decided how you were going to solve. My jaw set. I got out, opened Donna's door, offered my arm. "Let's go." 360 people fill a room differently than you'd think. Not just the noise, the weight of all that watching. Chandeliers the size of canoes threw gold light over round tables in ivory linen, centerpieces that probably cost more than my first work van. A string trio played something I didn't recognize near the front. Our table, 11, was tucked near the service door, the one the staff used to run plates in and out. Curtis had already found his seat beside us and squeezed my arm without a word. Tristan and Naomi's table was at the far end, flanked by her parents on one side, and a wall of white floral arrangements on the other. Between us and them sat 7 full tables and 300-some people, and the kind of seating chart that sends a message without anyone having to say it out loud. The ceremony itself was short and traditional. Tristan looked handsome and terrified the way grooms always do. He glanced back once during the processional. One looked toward our table, then turned forward, and I understood that was probably all we were getting. At cocktail hour, a man at our table asked what I did for work. "Mechanical contracting, 32 years, I told him. He nodded the way people nod when they've heard exactly what they expected and lost interest, then turned to talk to the man on his other side. Donna found my hand under the table, and I let her keep it. I sat there in my good suit at table 11 by the service door and thought, this is what we've been reduced to in our own son's life. I was wrong about one thing, though. We hadn't been reduced. We'd been positioned, and Naomi wasn't finished yet. Dinner started with toasts and the usual choreography, and Naomi made her bride's circuit of the room, table by table, touching shoulders, soaking up compliments, managing the floor like she'd planned the route days in advance. She got to our table last. She didn't stop. She slowed for half a second, looked past Donna toward Curtis, gave a small wave at nobody in particular, and kept walking. Sandra Lynn made up for it about 10 minutes later, appearing at Donna's shoulder with a flute of champagne and the warmth of a woman running for the local school board. "Donna, sweetheart, your dress is lovely." A beat, Very practical. Practical. Not beautiful, not elegant. Practical like a pair of winter boots, like something chosen by a person who didn't know any better. Thank you, Donna said, and meant it, the way she means everything, no armor on her at all. I set my fork down. Curtis leaned over. Gray, we could leave after dinner. There's no rulebook that says we have to be his parents, I said. We stay. Across the room, Tristan was laughing at something one of his groomsmen had said, looking genuinely happy, genuinely at ease, and I watched him for a second trying to find the 23-year-old who used to call me from a job site just to tell me he'd learned something new. Then Naomi peeled off from a cluster of guests near the head table and started walking toward us. Not the wide social glide she'd used on everyone else. This was direct, deliberate. She pulled out the empty chair across from Donna and sat. Whatever was on her face, it wasn't a smile. It looked like an ending. She folded her hands on the tablecloth. Her voice was low, not from discretion, but the particular low of someone who wants to be heard clearly by everyone close by, without appearing to be making a scene. Donna, I think we need to talk about some things. Donna set down her water glass. Of course, Naomi, whatever you need. What followed was a list, delivered evenly, flat, almost rehearsed, which somehow made it land harder. Naomi said Donna had overstepped when I arranged the tent contractor, said it like Donna had been the one to make the call. Said Donna had been putting pressure on Tristan, creating obligations he felt he couldn't say no to. Said Donna had been saying things about her at the rehearsal dinner that weren't kind. Donna's face went very still. Naomi, I'm not finished. The table beside us had gone quiet. I just want us to be clear, Naomi continued, about what this relationship looks like going forward. Tristan and I need space to build our life, and that means boundaries. Donna nodded slowly. I understand. I'm sorry if I've ever. She was apologizing again for something she hadn't done, the way 100 small moments had trained her to, automatically. I set my hand flat on the table. Naomi, that's not what happened with the tent. Tristan asked me to handle it. She turned to me, sharp. I'm speaking to Donna. The table next to us had fully stopped talking by then. Across the room, 10 feet back near the bar, Tristan was watching. His glass was halfway to his mouth, frozen there. He'd heard. He'd seen. He didn't move toward us. Donna started to rise, graceful, quiet, the way she does everything. Naomi, maybe this is better saved for another time. Today is your... No. Naomi rose with her voice climbing a register, not screaming, but loud enough now for 2 or 3 tables. We talk about this now. I'm tired of this being pushed off. She half turned toward the room, like she was drawing it in as a witness. I know you've been talking to people here, saying things about me, I know it. That isn't true, Donna said, very quiet. Don't tell me what's true. Naomi stepped forward, 1 step, just 1. You've been trying to undermine me in my own marriage since the day Tristan brought me home, and I am done pretending I haven't noticed. She slapped Donna across the face. Not a glancing thing, not a shock of stray contact, a real deliberate slap, the kind that turns a whole head, that leaves the sound hanging in the air like a struck bell that won't stop ringing. The string trio cut off mid-note. 360 people went from talking to holding their breath in about 1 second flat. Naomi straightened, looked at Donna, at the mark rising red on my wife's cheek, and her voice carried clean across that suddenly silent ballroom. Get out of here. Nobody invited you to be part of this. This is our day. Tristan was still standing at the bar. He set his glass down on the counter, slow, deliberate. He looked at his mother, at the mark on her face, at his wife standing there like she'd just delivered a verdict, and he said nothing. Not one word. Curtis was already half out of his chair. I put a hand on his shoulder. Curtis, I said quietly. Sit down. I stood up. The room was still holding its breath, 360 people trying to decide whether to look or look away, and most of them choosing wrong. I walked around to Donna's side of the table, took the white napkin off the place setting, and held it gently against her cheek. Not because she needed it, not because there was anything to wipe away, but because she'd just been struck in front of an entire room, and she deserved one moment of being tended to. She let me. I set the napkin down, helped her to her feet, straightened the little brooch at her collar, the same way I had in the hotel room that morning. Then I did up the middle button of my jacket, turned, and looked at the room. Not at Naomi, not at Sandra Lynn, at the room itself, the tables, the faces, the people who'd just watched my wife get hit and were going to spend the rest of their lives deciding what they thought about that. I found Tristan across the floor. He was looking at his shoes. I waited long enough that eventually he looked up. We'll talk later, son. 4 words. No anger in them, no shake in my voice, just the particular weight of something being decided right there on the spot. I offered Donna my arm. She took it. We walked out. Near the back, past one of the last tables, an older man in a dark suit caught my eye on the way past. He gave me one slow nod, the kind that means I saw it, all of it. I nodded back. Outside, the night air off the lake was cool, the parking lot quiet, and Donna was shaking lightly against my arm. I held on to her and didn't say a single word until she was ready to. Curtis found us by the car 10 minutes later. Didn't ask a single question, just stood there in her good shoes on the gravel keeping Donna company, while I sat on the hood and looked up at the sky. Donna spoke first. Why didn't he? She stopped, started again. Tristan, why didn't he say anything? Nobody answered. There wasn't an answer that would have helped. I got up, opened the passenger door. Let's get you inside. In the car, Curtis sat in the back. Nobody said much. The hotel was 25 minutes off, and I drove the whole stretch without the radio on. Halfway there, Donna put her hand on mine. I don't want to lose him, Gray. I know. Promise me we won't lose him. I kept my eyes on the road. We're not going to lose Tristan. But we're going to have to figure out what we're willing to accept to keep him. And I'll tell you right now, it's not this. It can't be this. She was quiet a moment, nodded once, and turned to look out her window. At the hotel, once Curtis had gone to her own room and Donna was in bed, I sat in the chair by the window with my phone. The city outside was ordinary and indifferent, which felt right just then. I opened Russ's name and called. He picked up on the second ring. Russ. Do you remember the conversation we had about the Concord Crossing development? A pause. I'm sitting in the parking lot 2 blocks from that venue, Graham. I saw the whole thing. His voice was careful. Tell me what you need. There are things your children don't know about you, not because you've hidden them, because they never thought to ask. Russ Dorkson and I started as apprentices together at the same mechanical shop in 1988. We were on the same crew for 6 years before he went into commercial development. We were each other's best man, stood up for each other through 2 divorces between us, his, not mine, my father's funeral, Donna's health scare in 2011 that turned out, thank God, to be nothing. He'd built a development company over 15 years that had grown well past anything either of us would have guessed back when we were running pipe together. His firm was the lead on Concord Crossing, a mixed-use development out past the airport corridor, the biggest project the region had seen in close to 20 years, and they were in the final stretch of selecting commercial brokers for the leasing side. 3 months earlier, Tristan's firm had submitted a proposal to handle leasing for the retail component. His biggest pitch yet by a wide margin. He didn't know Russ was on the selection committee. He'd never once thought to ask. I hadn't told him, not to keep a secret. There'd simply never been a reason to until now. In that parking lot, Russ and I talked for half an hour. He told me the committee had liked Tristan's technical work fine, but the last stage of selection always came down to character and network. Who vouches for who, in an industry that's small? What do you want me to do, Graham? He asked. I thought about the mark on Donna's cheek, about Tristan at the bar with his glass frozen halfway to his mouth, saying nothing. I don't want you to hurt him, I said. I just need you to stop covering for him the way I always have. Let whatever's going to happen, happen. Russ was quiet a second. Understood. That was all. Tristan called at 11:15 that night. The phone buzzed on the nightstand and Donna stirred. I took it into the bathroom, shut the door, sat on the edge of the tub. Dad. His voice had the careful evenness of a man who'd rehearsed his first line. I think we should talk about tonight. All right, I'm listening. Naomi was under a ton of stress. The whole day was. It was a lot. She didn't mean it the way it came out. She's going to call Mom tomorrow and apologize. I didn't say anything. Dad, she wants to fix this. Tristan, your wife struck your mother across the face in front of 360 people. I kept my voice level. And you stood there. The pause that followed told me I'd landed exactly where I meant to. I know, he said, finally quiet. I need you to sit with that, I said. Before we talk about Naomi's stress level, or what she's planning to do tomorrow, I need you to actually sit with what you did and didn't do tonight. That's not fair. It's very fair. Call me when you're ready to talk about that part, not before. I ended the call and sat on the cold edge of the tub a long while, listening to Donna's breathing settle through the thin bathroom door. Sunday morning, Tristan called at 8, then again at 9:15, then 9:40. I let all 3 go to voicemail. Donna's phone rang just after 10. She was at the little hotel table in her robe with her coffee, looked at the screen, saw Naomi's name, and looked at me. Your call, I said. She set the phone face down and wrapped both hands around the mug instead. 15 minutes later, a text from Tristan. Dad, Naomi is sorry. She wants to talk. We all need to talk, please. I texted back. When you're ready to talk about what happened, not to explain Naomi, to talk about what happened, call me. No response for 4 hours. Curtis joined us for breakfast at a diner down the street. Eggs, strong coffee, a window booth looking out over an ordinary Sunday morning, people walking dogs, a kid on a bike, the whole street entirely unaware that anything had ended or begun the night before. How are you actually doing? Curtis asked. Not great, I said, but better than I expected. She nodded. That was enough. Back at the hotel, I opened my email. Russ had written that morning at 7:12. The Concord Crossing Committee was meeting Monday. Tristan's firm was still technically on the short list. The committee had questions about references and professional network, and Russ would be in the room for that part. He hadn't asked me what to do this time. He'd just told me the facts. I read it twice, closed my phone, and looked out the window at the rest of Sunday arriving. For the first time in years, I didn't reach for the phone to make a problem go away. I let it sit, I let it breathe, and for the first time in a long while, that felt like the right thing to do. They showed up at our house Monday morning without calling first. I heard the car in the driveway from the kitchen. Donna was at the counter. She looked at me. I dried my hands. Tristan had his jaw set the way he does when he's bracing for something. Naomi was in a cream blouse, composed, deliberate. She dressed for this. We sat in the living room. No coffee offered. That was new. Naomi folded her hands in her lap and looked at me directly. Mr. Whitfield, Mrs. Whitfield, I owe you an apology for my behavior Saturday. I'm sorry if what I said caused pain. Sorry if. The room went very quiet. Naomi, I said, a conditional apology isn't one. She held my gaze. I'm not sure what more you want me to say. Then I'll be specific. You struck my wife across the face in front of 360 people. You told her nobody invited her into her own son's life. And your husband, my son, said nothing. What I want, I went on, is for you to understand what those things actually were. Not so, I feel better. So you actually understand. Tristan started, Dad. This isn't your conversation right now, Tristan. Naomi's composure cracked just slightly at the edge. So what does this mean going forward? What are you planning to do? I looked at her level. Nothing dramatic. What it means is your mother-in-law and I have changed what we're available for. And that change isn't getting negotiated in a Monday morning living room. You'll see what it looks like over time. She searched my face for anger, for hurt, for any leverage at all. There wasn't any to find. They left 20 minutes later. Naomi walked out with her shoulders back, still performing, but at the door she glanced back at me for just a second. She wasn't sure anymore, and she knew that I knew it. Russ called Monday at 4:15. Committee met this afternoon, he said. Tristan's technical submission is solid. Good instincts, clean presentation, a pause. Then they asked about the family, professional network, character references, the usual. What did you tell them? The truth. I told them I've known Graham Whitfield for 36 years, and he's the most principled person I've ever worked alongside in this industry. Another pause. Then they asked if I had the same confidence in his son. I told them I hadn't worked with Tristan directly, didn't have the first-hand knowledge to vouch for him. In this industry, that answer carries a specific weight. Not a lie, not a smear. Just the absence of a recommendation from someone in a position to give one, and everybody in that room understood exactly what the silence meant. They pulled him from the short list, Russ said. I want you to know I didn't say a single negative word about him. I know, I said, and I want you to know I'd have made the call for him a week ago if you'd asked me to. I didn't ask. No, Russ said, you didn't. We sat on the line a second. You all right, Graham? I'm figuring out what all right looks like from here. I looked out at Donna's garden. I'm not sorry. That's new for me. After we hung up, I sat with that a while, the weight of what I hadn't done. I hadn't engineered a thing, hadn't plotted, hadn't pulled a single string. I just stopped being the cushion that caught my son before he ever hit ground. He'd built his whole confidence on knowing I'd always be there to catch him. Now he was going to find out what he was made of without it. That wasn't punishment. It was the most honest thing I'd ever done for him. Tristan called Tuesday evening, and the tone was different from the first call. The rehearsed evenness was gone, and what was left sounded like my son again. Dad, we got the email from Concord Crossing. I heard. A long pause. Were you involved in that? I thought about how to answer it honestly. I didn't do anything to hurt your chances. I didn't make a call against you. Didn't say a bad word about you to anyone. What I did was not step in the way I normally would have. That's the same thing, it's not. But I understand why it feels that way. Silence. Then, you always stepped in. My whole life. I know. So why now? I looked at the kitchen wall a moment. Because your wife hit your mother, and you stood there and said nothing. And I had to figure out what it meant that I was still going to show up and smooth everything over for you afterward. What that was actually teaching you. A pause. What it was teaching me. Tristan didn't say anything for a long while. When he spoke again, his voice was lower. What do I do now, Dad? That's the first honest question you've asked me in 2 years. I meant it gently, and I think he heard it that way. Figure out what kind of man you want to be. Not for me. Not for Naomi. For yourself. What you stand for and what you won't stand for, that answer has to be yours. And if I figure that out, are we okay? We're always going to love you. That doesn't change. But okay is a process. It's not a light switch. He went quiet again. All right, he said finally. It wasn't enough. It wasn't everything. But it was the first brick of something we might actually build something on. Naomi came alone Thursday afternoon, jeans and a light jacket, none of the careful costumings from Monday. I heard the knock, answered the door. You pulled a major deal for my husband, she said, no preamble. Because of what happened at the wedding, that's retaliation. Come in if you want to talk about this. I'll say it here. She squared her shoulders. You used your connections to punish Tristan because of me. That's what happened. Naomi. I kept my voice even. I didn't make a single call against your husband. I didn't reach out to anyone to work against him. What I stopped doing was going to bat for him the way I always have. That's a very different thing. And if you think about it clearly, you'll see that. You let him fail. I let him stand on his own. That's what parents are supposed to do, eventually. You're punishing him for what I did. I'm done shielding him from consequences he's earned through the choices he made, including the choice to stand at a bar and say nothing while his wife hit his mother. She stared at me, looking for the anger, the moral crack, the opening. If you don't support us, she said, you'll lose him. I looked at her a long moment. Naomi, I lost something I thought I had the second I watched my son make his choice Saturday night. Whatever comes next gets built from there. That's between him and you, not me. I took a step back. You don't get to tell me what my relationship with my son costs, she said. That's not how this works. I closed the door, quiet, no drama, nothing more than was needed. The week after was ordinary in that particular way. Things get ordinary after something irreversible happens. The coffee still brewed, the mail still came, the garden still needed watering, but ordinary differently now, with new edges to it. Sandra Lynn called Wednesday. I was out back. Donna took it. The message, delivered in the smooth vocabulary of a woman used to mediating country club disputes, was essentially that enough time had passed, feelings had been expressed, and wouldn't it be better for everyone, most of all for Tristan, if the adults could simply move past it. Donna listened, then said, Sandra Lynn, I don't need Graham to forgive anyone right now. What I need is for my daughter-in-law to understand, not perform understanding, actually understand what she did, and I need my son to become the man I raised him to be. Neither one of those things happens because we agree to be polite about it. A pause on the line. Then Sandra Lynn thanked her and said goodbye. Donna set the phone down and stood very still a moment, and then turned around looking, for the first time in longer than I could remember, completely at ease. Curtis called that evening. Several of Tristan's friends who'd been at the wedding had started reaching out quietly, not organizing anything, not staging a thing, just people who'd seen what they'd seen and couldn't unsee it. 3 of them texted me separately, Curtis said. Gray, they all watched it happen. They're not going to forget it. I hadn't said a word to anyone. I hadn't needed to. 360 people carry 360 memories, and this region's small enough that it matters. 2 days later, I got an email from Tristan. Subject line, can we meet? Just us. We met at a park along the lake on a Thursday morning. He was already there, sitting on a bench with his hands loosely clasped, watching the water. He looked tired. Not one bad night tired. The tired of carrying something heavy for a long while and finally setting it down far enough away to actually look at it. I sat beside him. We didn't talk for a minute. I knew, he said, before the wedding. I knew Naomi was building something against Mom. I watched it happen. I kept thinking it would level off. He looked at his hands. I wanted it to level off, so I let myself believe it would. That's not the same as not knowing. No, I said, it's not. Water moved past us. Somewhere behind us, Dulk was barking at a jogger. Can you forgive me? He asked. I actually thought about it. Instead of reaching for the answer a father's supposed to give automatically, I love you. That never switches off. But forgiveness is something you earn through what you do over time, not by asking for it. I looked at him. I need to see who you are from here, not hear about it. He nodded slowly. Naomi and I are starting counseling, he said. I don't know where it ends up, but I know I can't keep doing what I've been doing. Good, I said, and meant it. We stood up together. We didn't hug. Neither of us was ready for that yet, and we both knew it. But I held his eyes for a second, and what passed between us was more honest than anything we'd managed in 2 years. I drove back alone, sat in the car a long time, and for the second time that week let myself cry. 10 days after the wedding, a cream envelope showed up for Donna, Naomi's handwriting on the front. Donna opened it at the kitchen table while I sat across with my coffee. She read it once, set it down, read it again. I didn't ask. She handed it to me, 1 page, handwritten. This time Naomi had used the word wrong, said she'd been wrong, said what she did had been harmful, took responsibility for it outright. She didn't say she understood why, which was honest, at least. Understanding takes longer. Donna sat with it a while, then went to the little desk in the corner where she keeps her stationery, the cream kind with her initials pressed into the top, and wrote back by hand. She brought it over for me to read before she sealed it. Naomi, I received your letter, and I'm glad you wrote it. I won't pretend the right words come easy, so I'll just say this. I hold no hatred towards you, but I can't pretend nothing happened, and I won't. When you're ready to have a real conversation, not to be forgiven, but to actually understand, I'm here for it. Take your time, Donna. No apology, no minimizing, no door opened wider than the situation called for. Is it too much? She asked. It's exactly right, I said. She sealed it herself, walked it down to the mailbox at the end of the drive. When she came back in, she washed her hands at the sink and started lunch like it was any other Thursday, but her posture was different, straighter, lighter. She'd stopped apologizing for existing. I couldn't tell you exactly when it happened. It just had. I didn't say a word to anyone, I want to be clear about that. No favors called in beyond what I'd already done. No pointed remarks, nothing posted, nothing emailed to anyone's employer. I went back to my life. Quotes, site visits, early mornings, Donna's garden on weekends. I was exactly the same as I'd always been on the outside. But 360 people carry 360 memories, and a city the size of ours, for all its sprawl, is still smaller than people pretend. About 3 weeks out, Curtis mentioned a woman from Naomi's spin class had reached out to a mutual acquaintance about what she'd seen. A month after that I heard, through a supplier I deal with, that Naomi's staging business, she did home staging for resale, mostly referral work, had gone quieter than usual. Nobody refused her outright. The phone just rang less than it used to. Referrals run on trust, and trust lives in the same small circles that 360 people belong to. Sandra Lynn showed up at a fundraiser luncheon Donna attended a couple of months later. I heard about it from Curtis, who heard it from Donna that evening. Somebody asked Sandra Lynn, point blank, in front of the table, whether the stories going around about the wedding were true. Sandra Lynn said there'd been a misunderstanding. The table went quiet, and the particular table goes quiet when nobody believes the answer, but everybody's too polite to say so out loud. That's the sound of a reputation starting to revise itself. I won't pretend there was no satisfaction in any of it, but satisfaction isn't the same thing as having wanted it. People ask me now and then if I feel like I got justice. I tell them, I'm not in the justice business. I'm in the integrity business. Those are 2 very different lines of work. I want to be honest with you about something else too. The silence I chose in that ballroom wasn't the same silence I'd been choosing for 2 years leading up to it. Those are different things. 2 years of looking the other way, of not pushing back, of letting things slide in the name of keeping the peace that silence cost us. It cost Donna. It cost Tristan, who learned to read my patience as permission. The silence in the ballroom was a choice made with everything I had behind it. The silence before that was something closer to a failure of nerve, dressed up to look like patience. If there's a lesson I keep coming back to, it's this. You can absorb a great deal for the people you love, but there's a point where absorbing stops being love and starts being erasure. You're allowed to be there fully, without apology. Don't let anyone, not a daughter-in-law, not a social occasion, not even your own bad habits, edit you out of your own family. 6 months on, Tristan and I get breakfast every other Saturday. Not at his place, not ours. We rotate through a short list of diners within a 15-minute drive of each other, the kind with laminated menus and coffee that comes in thick white mugs. No agenda. We talk about work, the news, whatever's on his mind. Sometimes we go 20 minutes without saying much, and that's enough now. Naomi hasn't been to the house since. Nobody ever said it out loud as a rule, but we've all quietly agreed to it. They're still in counseling. Tristan mentions it without elaborating, and I don't push. What matters is he's showing up for something hard and staying in the room. His firm landed a smaller leasing deal 2 months back, a strip retail fit out near the GO station, on his own, through his own network, which I think he needed more than he'd say out loud. He called to tell me when it came through, and he sounded different, not just happy, earned. Last week we were at the diner on Lake Shore, the one with the old photos of the harbor on the walls, from back when the whole area looked like a different town entirely. Tristan had been quieter than usual most of breakfast, not the managed kind of quiet, just thinking something through at his own pace, the way he does when something actually matters to him. He set his fork down after a while. Dad, that day at the wedding, when you got up and walked out, took Mom's hand and just left. He looked at me. I've replayed that probably 200 times since. I thought I knew what kind of man I was, had this whole idea of myself built up. He looked down at the table. And then I watched you walk out of that room without saying a word, without making a scene, and I realized I had no idea what it actually takes to do that. I thought being a man meant not backing down. Turns out it means knowing when walking out is the harder thing. I didn't say anything right away. Naomi and I are still in counseling, he said. I don't know what the future looks like, but I know I'm not going to be the guy who stands at a bar and says nothing anymore. I know, I said. He looked up. You know, I can see it these mornings. I can see you working at it. He nodded, and we paid the check and walked out into the late summer morning, 2 men with a long way still to go, and finally enough honesty between them to make the trip worthwhile. In this trade, we say the system's only as good as what's behind the wall. You can rebuild almost anything from there, as long as what's behind the wall is sound. Donna and I are doing that now, one Saturday breakfast at a time. If you've stayed with me this long, there's something I want to say before I let you go. If you saw yourself anywhere in this, someone who's absorbed too much for too long, someone seated at the table by the service door, someone whose child has looked away at the exact wrong moment, you are not required to make yourself smaller just to keep someone else comfortable in your presence, not even if that someone is your own child, not even with 360 people watching to see what you'll do. Walking out is not the same as giving up. Setting a limit is not the same as withdrawing your love. Those are things I had to relearn at 57 years old, in a stone ballroom outside the city in June, with my wife's hand in mine, and the whole room holding its breath behind us.